to Curator's Commentary. As you can see, I am working on the episode you're about to listen to right now. Before you move any further, I wanted to warn you, this episode is going to be a spoiler cast. We're going to talk about all 8 episodes of this limited series from Alex Garland. But not just that, we're also going to spoil his previous 2 solo directorial films, which are Ex Machina and Annihilation. And we will touch briefly on some of the themes from Alex Garland's previous work as a writer, a screenwriter for Danny Boyle, but we won't go into spoiler territory for that. Knowing that, if you haven't seen the movies or you haven't seen the show, stop the podcast now. Do not go further. You'll ruin the show for yourself, and you really don't want to do that, because this show is an incredible adventure that asks a lot of really cool philosophical questions, and I think you'll really enjoy it if you give it a chance. So, once you're done watching it, which shouldn't take you long because lots of people binge shows nowadays, and 8 episodes at like 52 minutes apiece, you can knock that one out on a Saturday. And then hop right back in and listen to us chat about some of the deeper themes in this and the rest of Alex Garland's work. So, without further ado, consider yourself warned. If you move further, know you're going to get spoiled. Oh, I'm also joined today by my collaborator and one of the co-founders of Movie Club, Gavin Slay, who has been on the past 2 episodes. He's been at least like tangentially related in pretty much every episode except for the Jaws one, which kicked off the podcast. So he's back tonight. We're chatting about this series. We both really love Alex Garland's work, and I think if you give this show a chance, you're really going to love it too. So, without further ado, I'm Patrick Smith. I'm the curator from Movie Club, and welcome to Curator's Commentary. The thing is, I started the export around 5 o'clock and assumed it would be done by now. And we're at 75% currently.
5%?
75.
Oh, okay.
So we're not quite as bad as it could be, but
something's wrong.
Yeah, it's so I'm exporting the first Curator's Commentary, but it's a video, and there's a little WAV file that displays throughout the whole video. Mm-hmm. It's essentially a podcast, but a video form of the podcast.
Yes.
And apparently it's extremely intensive for my computer to handle it.
Mm.
I didn't expect that in the slightest. Okay, how do I orient? I'm not super familiar with how Discord sets up video, because currently I'm like in this tiny corner down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, you can see my laptop and watch the progress back there.
Yeah, it doesn't have. I don't have it set to put up an overlay.
I do not know.
I wonder if there's a way to do that.
I'm sure that there's got to be an overlay or something for Discord.
And stay on top. That didn't work. There's a way to do it. It's
just a matter of figuring it out.
Yeah, I think it technically stays on top. But I don't think that the game kind of
supersedes it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I think if you have it set up as if like you're a streamer, it probably defaults to that, but I'm not entirely certain how to do that because I typically don't use Discord for stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I really tried to convince myself to do to shave the beard and go with the mustache for the video tomorrow, but I ended up getting called into work for Tuesday and Wednesday, so No, thank you. Especially since I work at a school, you know. Preferably not the mustache. Or, at the very least, I know that if I were to shave it all the way off and then go in, that would be the day that they decide to do my picture ID so I can get in and out of the school. And that's not how I typically look. And then also people will ask me if I'm supposed to be in class when I'm just wandering the hall. But
okay.
we were this close. If it had been 1 week later, I would have done it.
So does that mean you'll have work to do? Is that with like the theater stuff?
I don't know what it is, honestly. I've just been asked to come in on Tuesday and Wednesday. It could be a conference or whatever, but it's work. For the first time in months, really. So this is the set right here behind me for the videos. It has not moved since last Monday. I thought I was going to get a chance to shoot a second one this week, and then things ended up being a lot busier than I expected. It's probably going to take another week or so before I get like in the rhythm of being able to do it quickly.
Right.
I started to export it overnight last night, but it was really taxing my computer, and I just didn't feel comfortable leaving it on. I don't mind spending a whole day doing a render, but also I like to be present during a render in case there is a computer error. The good thing is I had plenty of time to go back and watch a couple episodes of Devs. So I could refresh my memory on the ending. Because it's been a little bit.
Yeah, I've been putting it off for a while and watching other stuff, and then I was gonna rewatch Dark for a little while, but then I thought
I've started that. That was the problem.
And I can binge it in a weekend.
Fair enough. You seem to be able to get through shows a lot quicker than I am. Like, I watched more episodes of a show in a single day today than I typically do, and it was to refresh my memory on this show.
Mm-hmm.
But typically I don't watch that many, even when I'm just watching it through for the first time.
Yeah, I usually don't either, but I've past couple weeks, or especially this weekend, I just kind of haven't felt great. So it's like,
okay,
well, I feel like crap. This is as good a use of time as anything I'm going to do, so might as well.
Right.
Sit and watch TV all day.
I mean, it's like 8 hours of television. How'd you finally get access to it? Because it's one of those weird shows that's like FX.
I think I don't think it's one of those where you have to have specific access. It is FX on Hulu, but I don't think you have to have an FX account.
Okay. Well, that's good news, because now
it's
I can
like
recommend
HBO shows or something that they.
Right, now I can recommend this show to other people, as opposed to being like, do you have these two things? Cool, now I can tell you about this show that I really like.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, did you just finish it yesterday or today? So what did you think, like, overall, since you're fresher
really
on the whole show?
It was good. It was, I mean, definitely Alex Garland.
Yes.
I could very much tell, see that it had him and his style written all over it.
Right, because have you seen 28 Days Later?
I have not.
That's a film he didn't direct, but he wrote. He also did Sunshine, which has Chris Evans pre-Captain America in it.
Oh,
and a couple other, like, bigger stars that, like, it's because for a while he was the writing partner of Danny Boyle, who directed a lot of movies but didn't necessarily write them. Mm-hmm. And so he was the writing partner, and then he branched off and did Ex Machina and Annihilation, and this is the most recent project.
Okay.
But I would wholeheartedly recommend 28 Days Later, and I can't recommend Sunshine because I haven't seen it in years, and I can't remember if it's good. I think it is, because I just saw 28 Days Later right before the apocalypse. So it was perfect timing.
Yes.
So what do you think, because you've seen his two theatrical releases, like how does this kind of stack up against those in your mind?
I find it really, really hard to rank his stuff for some reason. Like,
I agree that is
it,
an unfair question.
but
I am specifically asking.
I don't know, like, what if I would choose, like, but even between his two movies, I don't know which I like better. I mean, there's a lot that I like about Annihilation, but it's probably just, like, objectively isn't better than Ex Machina, but
right.
I do like Annihilation a lot, too.
Okay. Well, I have to admit, I have asked you an unfair question to start this, because trying to get you to rank something that has 8 hours of material versus something that tells its story in, like, 2 hours and some change is obscenely unfair. They're two wildly different mediums, television and film. And I think that was one of my big takeaways, like, this would have been a garbage movie because they would have had to, like, kick through some of this so quickly.
Right.
So
but it being paced really well.
Right.
Really
it being a film project gives him time to do, like, some of the weirder things that maybe he isn't allowed to do in, like, his movies because they're at least more mainstream. More people are going to watch his movies than I think an 8-hour standalone series on Hulu. Especially a series that is as weird as Devs. Like, Ex Machina is weird, and so is Annihilation, but, like, even those feel, like, more down to earth than, like, some, because this feels like engaging with not only, like, a third-year philosophy class, but also, like, theology and all kinds of, like, ideas of determinism, predestination, stuff like that.
Yes.
I feel like the fact that so many of the books on this bookshelf back here are, like, faith-based books that talk about, like, determinism helped me so much to understand this show. Because I've had to sit under people that, like, who have those arguments, and they're really fascinating.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, it's definitely not, like, what I liked about, I mean, well, I guess to answer your question, it definitely compared to his movies and books, and I don't think I liked it less, or, like, that much better than his other movies. I also thought that, I was going to say, one thing I lost what I was going to say. I answered your question.
Yes, you did. You answered my question satisfactorily, especially since it was an unfair one.
Yeah. But
Go ahead.
I really liked it. I thought it was, well acted, well cast, well written. There was, like I said, a lot of the, like, I could really compare it with Ex Machina and enjoy that, just because they're, like, grumpy tech millionaire.
Right.
Working on a secret project. And what I really liked about it was it kind of, whereas Ex Machina is kind of about technology breaking free from, well, in that case, man.
Right, yeah.
This is all about kind of like people, or woman breaking free of technology and choosing and escaping the bounds of that.
Right, but escaping technology by, like, diving into it?
Right. Not necessarily, like, escaping, like, oh, I put my phone down and
yes.
got away from
it.
Escaping, like, oh, hey, this technology specifically puts limits on who I am and what I can do, and
right.
I'm not going to do that.
I think one of my big takeaways from just having rewatched some of the episodes is that I think I get the point of the show as a whole, but I'm not quite sure I understand what he's trying to do with the ending yet, or what I'm supposed to get out of that. I feel like usually when I finish one of his films, I'm like, got it. I'm going to think about this for a while and, like, try and unpack its deeper themes, but I feel like usually when I finish one of his projects, I have a very clear idea of, like, what that ending means, and I don't think I have that here as much.
That's interesting. I would say I felt that way about Ex Machina. I definitely had to think about and or rewatch Annihilation to, I think, fully grasp or see for myself everything that he was going for with that one.
Yeah, firmly grasp it.
But this one, I mean, obviously I haven't rewatched it or spent that much time with it, so, but I do kind of feel like I vibe with it, I guess.
Right. I'm picking up what it's putting down. I love hearing anybody who wants to debate on like predestination and free or versus free will. I mean, that's that is the big question, isn't it? For anybody, really, is like, do we have free will, or are we predestined, or is it more complex? Do those two things kind of coincide somewhere in there? I'm not sure where Alex Garland stands. I'm wondering if he feels kind of like Lily, that he does have the freedom to make the choice, or he feels trapped in the system and wants to be able to make a Lily choice that breaks the system.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting ending because, I mean, she does make a choice and doesn't do, but the outcome is
effectively the same for her, yes.
So, but
I feel like the outcomes in both of his prior theatrical works feel a little bit more clear-cut with like what's happening there, or if like that was success or failure or both for different parties. I mean, it really, Ex Machina, it being understood as a success or a failure is firmly dependent upon who you think is the protagonist of that movie.
That's true.
Really, you only have two options, and it's not Oscar Isaac, as much as I love him in that movie. He's not really a super active role. He's an observer most of the film, and the few actions he takes ends up doing nothing for him. He's kind of a pawn the whole film.
Yes.
Then you have Domhnall Gleeson's character, who, I mean, the film does set him up to be the main character, but I think that's too easy of a answer. And so, personally, I feel like the only option you have is the last one, and that's the robot, or the thing that kind of bridges the gap between robot and man.
The AI.
Right, yes. And I think the ending to Annihilation is maybe more complex. Though I do think at the end of the day, all three of these projects are trying to deal with like ideas of free will and determination or determinism, because the whole experiment in Ex Machina is dependent upon Oscar Isaac like building Ava around Domhnall Gleeson's, I forgot his character's name, and so I'm just going to say it exactly. I think yes, that makes sense. I
don't know where I pulled that from.
That seems right. And I have the internet somewhere right around here. I've set my phone down. I'll check as I keep talking, as I word vomit at you to maybe get this idea out. So for him, it seems like he's kind of predestined for the outcome of that movie. The only person who seems to escape and exact free will is Ava. Maybe that might be wrong, but that's at least my current understanding of that film.
Yeah, it's kind of like I mean, basically, at the end of Devs. Oh, the other thing I wanted to just to mention is now Alex Garland has worked on projects that is technically Deus and Ex Machina.
I feel like that was his entire goal. That is an in-joke for him. There's no way that he's not clever enough to come up with that.
Uh-huh. I mean, even, God, what's it,
You are right, by the way. Caleb.
I'm just blanking on the actor's name who plays, Nick Offerman.
Yes.
Even his character says it's like, it's called Deus. That's kind of an inside joke or something.
I feel like that's Alex Garland speaking through his character right there.
Yes.
That's not Nick Offerman. That's not that character. That is totally Alex Garland saying, it's kind of an in-joke. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
I did it.
I mean, it's a clever joke. That's like 4 years that he set that joke up with.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, props to him for having that kind of commitment level to, like, pull off a joke 4 years in the making.
Yes.
Yeah, bringing up Nick Offerman, I think his performance wasn't my favorite, but it was one of my favorites from the show because it's so different from what you typically see him in like Parks and Rec and pretty much the rest of his filmography. This is very atypical for him to play a villainous character.
Yeah, he really does. I mean, he's not always like the most likable of characters, but he is
right. But that's usually a joke, and that it's not a joke here. He is pretty despicable, at least for those first couple episodes, until it delves more into his backstory.
And even then,
he's still a bad guy.
He's still
a bad guy. I think
the bad guy.
I was thinking about it. I was watching the 7th episode where like so many different things happen that sets up that final confrontation in episode 8, because episode 8 is practically just the confrontation that we've been racing towards for 7 episodes. But in episode 7, it hit me that there's like 3 main antagonists, and that would be Nick Offerman's primary antagonist, and then I'm not quite sure how the secondary and the tertiary fall out, but I know it's Alison Pill's character, and then Kenton, yes, I knew he had one of those weird names. He's terrifying, I have to admit. Yeah. But for me, I think he's more terrifying than any of the rest of them because he's doing all this evil stuff, but it's not because he believes in this cause. Right. He's just doing this because it's his job.
Yeah, he's the Nazi of the group.
Right.
But yeah, definitely. He's the guy who, like you say, he's doing his job and he doesn't mind it.
Right. And really, it's only in episode 7 where he's just like, I'm not going to jail for this. You're gonna figure this out.
Yeah.
I don't care what I have to do. I will solve your problem, but I'm not going to jail for this. Because at least the other 2 villains have, like, a reasoning behind what they're doing. And you understand why they have stakes in this, or why they care about trying to accomplish their goal.
Sorry, it was killing an Enderman. Was super concentrating. Yeah, but yeah, he's definitely in a way there's like forgiveness for Nick Offerman's character.
Yes.
What's his name? It's I don't know.
I'll pull it up.
But it's there's forgiveness for him and for Alison Pill's character because they are like fanatics. They believe that they can't can't do anything.
Right, and when they explain that
people are set on, but Kenton doesn't really have that. He doesn't understand the philosophical stuff.
He doesn't understand it, and he doesn't believe in it. That's what makes him so terrifying to me. Is he's doing all the evil stuff. Really, he's like the one who kills all the people in the show, and doesn't have a backbone or a moral reasoning to do so. He just does it because he's told to. It's way scarier to me to have a villain that doesn't need a reason to do it, just does it because it's their job, as opposed to a villain that wholeheartedly believes in their cause. And you're like, I get it. You had a path. I understand how you got to that conclusion. Still wrong, though.
Yeah.
That person you can at least, like, reason with or sit down and have a conversation with. And they, like, do that in the show. But, Forrest is Nick Offerman's character's name.
Right. I don't know why I forgot that.
I didn't remember this, but Sonoya Mizuno, who's the main character in the show, Lily,
yes,
was in Ex Machina.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
She's great.
Right.
She's also in Maniac.
Mm-hmm.
Of the Netflix show, and is really great in that. Plays a really different character. But,
right.
Yeah, she's good.
I think the reason I was surprised that she was in Ex Machina is that she looks so different in that movie as opposed to here.
Yeah.
And it doesn't... I don't know.
Well, and it's such a different role, too. I mean,
right.
She is not even... She's AI, but she's not even as aware as Ava is.
Right. I was kind of sad that Oscar Isaac didn't show up in any fashion in this, because he'd had 2 movies with him, at least somewhat involved in those, and then it's just like, nope, not in this series.
Have a cameo or something.
Right, just like anything. I don't know. It would have been neat.
It would have.
Or maybe like an in-world, like on a screen at some point, just like one of the movies he's in is playing, just in the background. Just like he's at least tangentially involved in the film, even if he didn't have to go and record new footage for it. That would have been neat.
Yeah.
But I think I also found this show funnier than his previous 2 films. Like, I felt like there were moments of, like, dark comedy throughout the show. Or maybe I'm just... maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, I definitely agree. There is some moments of comedy in there. I'm trying to think if it's more or less funny than some of the... I mean, Ex Machina gets real weird and some, like...
Right.
Some of it's... just oddball humor.
Yeah.
But
the dance sequence is like the only thing, and then some of the banter between Oscar Isaac and Domhnall Gleeson is kind of funny. But other than that, that feels like that's in character. I feel like this world is a little bit more eccentric and weird and funny.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, Annihilation is definitely not the like you said is not at all comedy stuff.
Right. It's tough to talk about like the end of humanity in a lighthearted, upbeat way. I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
Thinking about it, this is another off-the-cuff idea, is that it seems to me that every one of his films is about evolution in some regard, a change from one form to another, like Ava being an evolution of humanity. She is both humanity and robotic, and is kind of the bridge between those two. Annihilation, the ending. Natalie Portman's character is no longer the original character that went into that other place. She is a new creation that is forever changed by her experiences and by that environment, because that's what it does. It like gets inside you and changes you. And then this show is, I mean, has the change at the end, the evolution to something completely different. They're now a part of the system. They're a part of this simulation as opposed to just merely human.
Yeah. I think that's a good observation. Yeah, and it another thing that this reminded me of specifically was the ending of the Silence in the Library, the Doctor Who episode.
Yes, okay.
The library episode.
I thought you were briefly talking about the Netflix film, The Silence, and I was like, I haven't seen that, so I'm just going to let him talk about this. But no, I'm aware of what you're talking about now.
But just kind of at the end, like in the ending of that one, River gets trapped in a machine, in a simulation.
Right.
Dies in the real world, but gets uploaded, and that just was an interesting parallel, because obviously also there's weird philosophical, is this actually better than
right
than anything? Or
what do you think about the music in the show? Because I know this is the same composers he's used for Ex Machina and Annihilation.
Is it the same composer?
Yes.
I didn't know that, but I did really like it. There were a couple of moments that I noticed, what's it called? Like some more acoustic guitar or acoustic music that sort of reminded me of Annihilation's soundtrack. Or some, the parts of Annihilation's soundtrack that are acoustic. There are parts that almost reminded me of Blade Runner, and like the sort of, because Blade Runner has that sort of like weird synthy soundtrack.
Yes.
And maybe other, haven't seen Alex Garland's other movies as recently enough to connect those two, but just kind of it was an interesting mix of like the synthy stuff and creating like and then the acoustic stuff. They did a good job of like setting the tone as like this sort of like sinister mystery that you don't know.
Right. Especially early on. That I think the music does a really good job of unsettling you. Like the first moment that I knew that I loved the score was like the lead up to when you're watching Sergei walk back onto the property and then like dump the gasoline on himself and then light himself aflame in the CCTV footage. That's when I was like, I think I'm gonna vibe with this show really well. Because like that music really got under my skin. I think I was watching that at like 11:30 at night, and I was like, "Yep, this is gonna be in my dreams."
Yeah, it definitely is. Was really good. I really liked it. I guess thinking more about it, what reminded me of Blade Runner was, I guess, just the sort of loneliness it also sort of gets across. Like Blade Runner, you hear like the music setting as you get these wide, the synthy music as you have these wide shots of the city and stuff. And there were a lot of things like that in this in Devs that it had that same sort of like, oh, well, yeah, there's this whole big compound of people working, but
right.
She feels completely alone.
Yeah, I totally see what you're talking about. I do think. Have you seen the sequel as well to Blade Runner 2049?
I have not seen that one.
Okay, then I won't spoil that for you. But I think, yeah, I do think those movies, that series as well, deals with like ideas of isolation, which ironically do take place in the same city as Devs. Just a future version of it.
Yeah.
Because it is the Los Angeles area in this both in Blade Runner and then the Silicon Valley area in Devs. So yeah, I do think that might be a perspective that is what a lot of people feel about Los Angeles, is that it is a pretty isolating city. I mean, you spend a lot of time in your car in traffic. That's what a lot of people talk about when they live there. And then you drive to work and you do your job and you get back in the car and drive 3 hours home. I do think that's part of it, but I do think that the idea that these are like musically connected through the fact that those scores evoke like an isolation or a loneliness makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I for some reason that just popped into my head at some point. It was like, oh, this is because it's not like I've seen Blade Runner a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I rewatched it a few months ago, but it just immediately struck me. So it was interesting.
It's a good choice, good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend the sequel.
Yeah, I need to. I just need to.
I mean, you do need to like carve out 2 hours and 45 minutes out of your day to sit down and watch that film that's gonna leave you going, oh God.
Yeah. But another thing I just want to comment on, just like the huge statue.
Yep.
Great design.
I agree. It was really weird seeing actual Amaya, like the kid Amaya later in the show. It kind of was like an uncanny valley type deal, but in the reverse. And seeing the kid was like, nope, don't like that.
Yeah. Yeah, like, because the statue is so unsettling.
But you get used to it.
The kid herself is unsettling.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do think the scene with the car crash that kind of like effectively sets the whole show in motion, the whole story in motion, was extremely well done. And I think that particular episode was I think episode 6, right after Lily gets taken to the psychiatric facility, and then it's kind of Alison Pill's character just going through like a bunch of different like past events.
Yeah.
I thought that was extremely well done to kind of explain why Forrest wanted to do this whole project to begin with.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah, and just talking about a gut punch, I've had actual nightmares like that.
Yeah.
Where you're like just watching someone and all of a sudden there's a car and that person is gone.
Yeah. I think the only time I felt a car crash as much as the one in this show was the one at the end of No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
The one with you've seen the movie. I'm not about to spoil the ending, right?
I've seen the movie. I'm kind of blanking on.
Okay, so
the car crash,
at the very end,
you won't spoil it by telling me.
Right. At the very end, Anton Chigurh has killed the effective main character of the film, like at the end of the second act, and is now like tracked down his wife, and kills her off screen. And then he gets in his car and leaves, and as he's driving away, he gets hit by a car, but it's kind of shot in the reverse way you expect it to be. Because usually in a like car crash, in any drama film, any film in particular, it's shot from the passenger seat, usually because there's two people in the car, or there's one person in the car, but they're either talking to themselves or they're on the phone or something. There's some kind of story element happening. And the car comes from the driver's side door, so you see it in the distance before it hits, and they shoot it. The opposite.
Looking at the passenger, and you don't see the. They don't see the car, but
right,
you do.
But you do. So you get that. You get that moment of anticipation where you're like, it's about to happen. In No Country for Old Men, they do the reverse. They shoot it the same way, but the car hits it from the opposite side. So you don't see the car coming, and you don't have that moment of anticipation. It hits you the same way that it would as if you didn't notice the car until it hit you. And I remember watching that scene. It was like, oh God. And I just think it's so, because your brain is programmed to expect that, and the whole time you're watching that shot, it's like, you know, a car crash is going to happen, but it happens the wrong way.
Yeah.
And though this one was framed, I think you're not in the car when it happens, and it's framed in a way that you know it's going to happen, mostly because you have enough puzzle pieces at this point to understand that that's what's going to happen. It's still because you're locked into like Forrest's perspective of watching it happen and being on the phone with them when it happens, that it is it's really unsettling.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I've had, like I said, it's unsettling. It's visceral. You feel it, and then like if you've yeah.
Have you ever had the misfortune of being in a car crash?
I was rear-ended one time.
Okay.
Back in high school. But the truck I drove was... I drove away from it. Barely a scratch on the bumper of the steel bumper of the old truck I was driving.
Yeah.
And the guy who rear-ended me, I probably still have a photo. Let me park myself somewhere where I'm safe. And look, but his car was pretty much totaled because it done it under it. Yeah.
While you look for that photo, I'm going to give you an update on my export. Holy crap, we're at 92%. It's almost done.
At what?
92. I might be able to join you in a few minutes. I do have to admit that I was really bummed when they killed Boyfriend Dude.
Yeah.
Because I expected it when Kenton came to the house the first time, that he was going to torture him, figure out what he knew, and then kill him so he could report it back to Forrest. But he doesn't. And so you're like, okay, he's safe. And then Kenton comes back, and you get that moment where you're like, they're going to do it this time. And it's still upsetting because, like, watching their relationship, like, come back together is really nice. I think that's extremely well done.
Yeah.
And it's what ends up driving Lily to go to the place that she doesn't want to go to. Like, her whole plan was to just pretend it's a normal day. And then that just doesn't work out. The only complaint I might have about the show, and it might just be because it's still pretty fresh in my mind, is I wanted the homeless dude to just be a homeless dude. Yeah. I was a little bit disappointed in that he was...
figured out really early on. I was like, there's no way this guy's just a homeless dude. He's Russian. And yeah, he was Russian.
I have to admit that I didn't, because I didn't. I think it's wholly because I didn't want him to be. I just refused to believe it, and so I convinced myself it wasn't the thing, and unconsciously I knew it was, but I didn't want to believe it. So externally I was able to be like, he's not a Russian, he's just a homeless dude. And I was really vibing with, like, the way that he was represented, because in so many pieces of media, like, homeless people are represented as, like, garbage people who are criminals and stuff like that. And in reality, they're not like that at all. And so I was like, oh, this is nice. They're representing a homeless person who's just a really chill dude, and like actually cares about the people that live there, or at least cares about Lily because she treats him well. And I really liked that relationship. And so I was a little bit disappointed when he shows up and kills the dude and counts in Russian. If he hadn't, it would have been fine if they had just set him up to kill the dude at the to save Lily because he liked her a lot. But I was a bit disappointed that he just turned out to be a Russian operative. I get why.
Yeah, I had that. I just thought early on, I don't remember when, but just really early on, I had the thought, well, we know someone's watching the house.
Right.
And they focus, it's sort of the Chekhov's gun thing. Like, they spend way too much time on this guy for him to be just random.
I would agree with that if they didn't also like spend time on other shots that like don't actually go anywhere and are more just kind of like these moments to like get you immersed in the world, because there are just shots that go on for way longer than you expect them to, and I don't know if they necessarily add anything to the story except for maybe immersion. They might be like, here's this world, we're gonna let you sit in it, because there's like a shot briefly where they're just in a park and a dude is playing guitar, and like that's the only point of that shot. There's no like real purpose to it other than it's world building. And so I kind of got the impression that like, and especially going back and watching the last couple episodes, there were shots that lingered on him, but like stuff was happening in the background that was kind of important.
Right.
Like Kenton was moving.
One where Kenton walk across, I caught that and I was like, oh, that's really good. And of course they immediately cut back to Kenton, but just they stay
on that shot long enough where you're like, something's important here, and then you realize pretty late in the game that Kenton has been walking across the shot pretty much the whole time, or like pulls into frame, gets out of his car, and then walks. And so I really wanted to believe that he was just a homeless dude, but you know, alas, I was wrong.
I feel that.
But overall, that's really like my only complaint about the show.
Yeah. A couple other shots that I noticed and liked. The one in the very first episode where they give Nick Offerman, or Forrest, a tree halo.
Yes. They give a couple characters throughout the show halos, which, I mean, obviously is kind of tied to both the name of the show and like the central idea behind it. And the fact that like Silicon Valley idols are typically people who think they're gods, or at least are trying to be gods. And during those first couple episodes, it does feel like a critique of people like Elon Musk and people who are in charge of Microsoft and stuff like that, who just seem like they're like figureheads that think they're gods or that they're really important, when in reality they're just kind of these weird nerds.
Yeah. And that's still an important part of it, too.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying that the later episodes discount that idea. It's just it becomes more understated throughout the rest of the show because, in a way, Forrest is right.
He does have,
At least until Lily makes her choice that, like, is, like, the first choice, which they equate to, like, the original sin, which I thought was interesting.
Oh yeah,
because like really that is effectively, if at least if you're reading the Bible, that was effectively the original sin. It was making a choice to disobey an order.
Right. The disobedience more than just like the choice itself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Which I think at the end, when that becomes like the linchpin, her being able to make the choice, I think is kind of where I stand in the whole determinism, free will argument, is that it's this. It's not this or this, it's both.
Mm-hmm.
I do think Alison Pill gives an exceptional explanation for like why there are no random events, why nothing happens without a reason. It might not happen for a good reason, but it happens for a reason. Cause and effect leads things to happen. We do have the ability to make choices within that framework. One of the other things that I found fascinating that I very quickly like to talk about is after they watch on the big screen like what's about to happen, and they have that brief conversation, and they go back in and then they say their things. The second time that you hear it, it feels like watching a stage play. But they're not really good actors. They're just kind of like going through rote motions. It feels a little bit overacted, which I think is brilliant. Because they're playing roles. And then the thing that upsets that balance is the choice that gets made. That's not supposed to happen. And that's when like that whole thing is upset.
That's also I kind of agree. I kind of had that feeling like even from Nick Offerman through the whole first part of it of the whole first part, but like that same conversation, right? Like where he's been like, yeah, I've seen this a bunch of times and I know how this plays out. Right. And you kind of see that in his performance. It's really good.
Yeah. And even Lily gets that after like seeing it once. It's like that kind of like, well, this is what it is. I don't know. It's just like a fascinating final episode. I feel like the final episode could be its own like standalone film, almost. You wouldn't quite get like the emotional punch at the end, but like I feel like you could, and it might be that he shot at least part of that to convince Hulu and FX to let him make the whole show. Like he shot that bit with just a couple actors as a short film as a proof of concept, essentially. Because if I had to pick one scene out of the entire show that I'd want to do that one to prove like this is what I want to do, but for an entire show.
That is just kind of like that ending. He's really good also at getting like his endings to be like really good encapsulations of like the message of the show.
I feel like I was maybe a little bit too stupid this time to get like the whole idea.
Yeah, well, not even like that. Like not even like that it's always easy to understand because he tackles kind of hard subjects, but also like everything that you've learned from the show led to that moment, and it's that moment is great on its own, and it's amplified and made even better by everything else that came before it. Another thing I noticed about it was like in Ex Machina and Annihilation, he really likes to complement the story, especially in Ex Machina, with shots of outdoors scenery. And there's a lot of that in Devs too, but there's also some like just city urban shots too that mix well in with it. I thought that was really nice. Because you got like still got the beautiful nature scenes, but you also got some really nice looking urban establishing shots.
I wonder how far out of the city you would have to ride to actually go to where Devs would be. Because I mean, it's a pretty industrial city if you've ever been there. It's not exactly easy to get to a place where there's a lot of woods.
Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah. think about the ending, like where she makes the choice but it still ends up, the outcome still ends up the same. Did you?
I mean, I knew that was going. I knew that was going to happen.
By it?
I think if it ended with that, I would have been disappointed. But the fact that it had the tag after that, I think made up for it.
Yeah.
I could easily understand why someone would be very disappointed with that, but that's kind of the whole point of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Is she did make a choice, and that's fine, and I mean, she effectively broke the system, but other people are still going to play by the rules and are going to follow their parts, their bit roles. So, it makes sense. I think the way that they frame that and they shoot that, it makes sense that that's exactly what's going to happen. And in a very immediate part of like your soul when you're watching that is like, well, this is very disappointing. What's the point if she makes a decision and it changes nothing? And in a way, it didn't really change anything, because it seems like Forrest had the idea that they were both going to die in that situation regardless, and be uploaded to the system so that way they could live the lives that they wanted to. But I do think, at least through my understanding and my rationality, is like, we are in a determined system, but we have free will within it. And since we have free will within a determined system, we are accountable for all of our actions. And I think it's a powerful statement to be like, I'm going to do what I want. I'm actually going to make a physical choice here. I'm not just going to let my life happen around me. I'm going to be an active participant in it. I think makes her a hero. And it's why instead of Forrest being the sacrificial character in that, being the Messiah in that, after her whole speech about them being false prophets, which Forrest effectively is, the shot literally of her is like an overhead shot. She's like dying, suffocating in the vacuum seal, but
right
in like the cross, yeah, which they've only been mentioning the entire show. So it's not subtle, but like it's clever. So yeah, if you read it on the surface level, it's disappointing. But I think if you're in on Alex Garland at this point, you understand that he's at least going to be a little bit more subtle with his endings, or subtle with his like victories for our main characters. Because
right, yeah.
In Ex Machina, if you've rooted for the wrong person the entire film, it's very disappointing when Caleb just kind of gets locked up in that room and is left to die. Because that's not what you want. You're like, he's the main character. You're wrong, but it's not about him liberating someone else. And I think if it was, it would be another fairy tale like that all of us have grown up with Prince Charming saving Cinderella, or it'd just be another one of those Disney fairy tales. And instead, she saves herself. She is the liberator of herself, and it makes it much more of a feminist film because of that. And I think that's kind of the case with every single one of the films. And though Natalie Portman's actions at the end of Annihilation technically don't result in a success and her effectively escaping still herself, the fact that she was willing to fight against this determined system, fight against what was seeming like a foregone conclusion, I think is exactly what Alex Garland is after. He wants to rebel against a system that doesn't allow for free will. And by rebelling against the system, you're exacting free will. Even if it doesn't result in a success, the fact that you're doing it is a win in and of itself. And I think that's like the core of his theology. Obviously, I'm still kind of forming it because the show is the most recent component of that theory, but That's kind of my understanding of his work thus far. It doesn't take in his films that he didn't direct but he just wrote. I don't know how to associate those in yet, or if they technically can fit into that theory. I don't know. He's another one of those directors that I feel like is a hopeful nihilist. Where, I mean, essentially...
I do think that.
Yeah.
I think that definitely fits.
I mean, hopeful nihilism is kind of the time right now. Well, that about wraps up our conversation today on Devs, which was a fantastic show. I hope you enjoyed our conversation about the deeper themes of Alex Garland's work, and I hope you've enjoyed our little travel through some really great art. And that's about all I have to say. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll come back next week because we have a great episode on the fantastic Stanley Kubrick movie from 1964, the black satire that is Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Hopefully I'll see you next week, but if I don't see you around, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.